Hello everyone, this is Angel Soriano. Welcome to this segment of Ask the DogMan on Facebook Live. If you're new to the show, this is the show where we offer solutions to your canine behavior issues, training, etc., etc. And we do it live, which means that typically things will go wrong, okay? We just trip over ourselves sometimes and things just fall apart. But that's the beauty of a live show. By the way, I deal with it fine for whatever reason. I kind of like that stress. James, our producer, does not, okay? He is, like I said, he just did something. Now he's all stressed out. Anyway, this, like I said, it happens more often than not. But anytime you do something live, it's kind of fun, okay? It's exciting because things, we do trip. So before we start, let me explain how you can engage us here, okay? It's pretty simple. You just add a question in the comment section below, and we attempt to get to it, okay? Every now and then we screw up, and James mentioned earlier there was somebody that attempted to get a hold of us after the show, or maybe towards the end of the show, and we never answered it last time, so I think he's going to go back to that question later on as we talk about this. But anyway, that's how easy it is to engage us, right? So for now, just tell us you can see us, you can hear us, thumbs up, whatever. Just give us some indication that you exist and that you can hear what we're saying today. We never know, okay? We never know with this technology. So what I wanted to do, though, before we start with the questions, James, is that Lynn and I... We were fortunate enough this past weekend to go on a small or short holiday. And that was, just Friday through Monday, right? We just took a couple extra days off just to go rest. And anyway, we ended up meeting a bunch of fine people. We went to Grand Lake, Monkey Island. We met a bunch of fine people. We ran across somebody that we know from church, 180 miles away from home, which is kind of weird. But really wonderful, great people. We got to know them more on a personal level. But all that to say is that we got to meet some great people, but more importantly, we got to see a bunch of dogs, okay? Because everybody on vacation either takes their dog, or people there that live there have their own dogs. And anyway, all things said, we've met some really nice dogs. And we met some other dogs that were just not that nice. But nonetheless, we still met them. I'm always paying attention to dogs for whatever reason. Imagine that, right? So, but it did get me to think about something, and I wanted to bounce this off. And that is, there are a lot of really smart dogs out there, and they're self-taught, which is interesting. And then I started looking at my dogs and other dogs that come to us for one reason or the other. And there's a lot of the behaviors that they do is a self-taught behavior. So if it's a good one, then, we all take the credit for it, right? And we say, this dog taught himself something, or I taught him to do this. And I found it funny as I watched these dogs, because some of them have some pretty bad behaviors, and the owners didn't even realize they had bad behaviors. They were pretty much clueless, not negatively in that they wanted the dog to have bad behaviors. They just didn't even understand that it was a bad behavior, some jumping on you and that kind of stuff. It's, oh yeah, he's saying hello to you. When, that might not be something that other recipient wants, is to have this dog jump on them. But anyway, it's a good calibration of what dogs out there, are doing, and how terribly smart they are in that they teach themselves. But one that comes to mind that I wanted to cover is the fact that we met a lady who runs a store. She has a small mixed dog that alerted to us coming into the store, which is great. It's an alarm system, but friendly. I could not find a behavioral issue with that dog. Friendly, and she would tell it something, the dog would go and do its thing, and you wonder, right? And then I asked, and no, there was no training behind it. So this dog is kind of self-taught, and everything was great and good. I petted it. It was a nice dog, right? However, in conversation, once she found out what we did, in conversation, she says, well, he's only got one little quirky thing. And I said, what is that? He says, well, he will bark, growl, and snap at them while they're in bed. So if they move the covers, he snaps, growls, and barks, and goes after them. So here's a seemingly really nice dog. Had I just seen this dog out on the street with him, just by the way it behaved, I would have said, wow, this is a self-taught dog that is doing phenomenal. And the reality is that it had some severe issues at home that I would have never known about. But all self-taught, right? And I got to thinking, gosh, they don't even, she wasn't putting a lot of value in it. It wasn't like this is a really bad thing. She was like, it's just a little quirky thing. Just keep your fingers off his mouth. So anyway, I found it funny that people are willing to accept that. And then I got to thinking, gosh, how many more dogs are there? And we're kind of protected in this circle, right? In that how. And what I mean by protected is that, the people that come to us, they have a problem, and then we go work on that issue, and they've already observed and identified they have a problem, but this person didn't. And I'm thinking, how do we tell this apart, Well,
one thing that we see a lot is that as a dog owner ourselves, we make excuses for our dogs because we love them and we don't see any fault in them. But when in reality, that's a serious problem, and you never can predict the future. What if a child comes over and messes with the dog while it's laying on the bed or whatever? It's a problem that should be addressed and should be noticed, but we always try and make excuses for our dogs.
Yeah. It's not a new issue, but it's kind of funny though. But we saw that a lot. So post down there if you have a funny story or not funny, or if your dog self-taught himself to do something. It's kind of a cool thing to do. We went by an RV park, it's where people park their big buses and stuff. We were checking one out that's right there in the island, and people bring their dogs with them. Interesting enough, there was several of these there, and the dogs were playing, and it was almost like they had an invisible fence. Dogs were playing near their RV with their children, or hanging out near their RV with their children. I got to thinking, okay, so that's a self-taught behavior, because these people will go from one park to another, right? That's a self-taught behavior. I can guarantee that those people are not doing very much to teach that dog to stay there. It's my assumption. It's just this dog knows this is the family, this is my RV, this is my area, this is where I need to hang, right? Now, did those dogs have any other bad behaviors? I wasn't there long enough to see them. But anyway, we saw dog after dog that was primarily the case. We saw one in the golf cart that self-taught himself to be in the golf cart with the golfer, right? In the passenger side of it, it was just sitting there, just like anybody else would sit. And the lady would get out and put her ball. The dog never moved, right? It just sat there in this chair. I'm thinking, that's interesting, because the average dog, you could maybe take them somewhere, but the minute you stop, they think you're out to do business, so they're going to get out and do their thing and run and harass people. This dog sat in that seat through the entire little viewing thing that I did, right?
Mm-hmm. And to add to how smart these guys can be, my puppy,
which is no longer a puppy. Holy mackerel!
No longer a puppy.
Yeah.
He's now almost 10 months old. We've never had a doggy door at home. I have an 11-year-old dog, and we've always opened the door. He hates the doggy door, but the puppy will go in and out. And so when my older dog is outside wanting to come in, he's waiting for me to open the door. But the puppy will be inside pawing at the doggy door, trying to entice him to just simply come into the doggy door. So they actually try and teach each other these behaviors. Now, that's not necessarily a negative behavior. A lot of times we hear people say, well, maybe I should just get another puppy so my older dog can teach my puppy. I'm going to just say here and now that that's not always a great idea, because your puppy will also teach your older dog bad habits. So relying that solely is never a good idea.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. And a lot of people do that, by the way. So don't think. By the way, we like it when you get 2 dogs and 3 dogs and 10 dogs. Okay, we know people that have, in the upwards of 12 and 13 dogs, and you know who you are. And we love it. Keep getting more. But get them because you're doing it for the right reasons, not because you're thinking that, my dog needs a friend, let me get a second dog, and then they're going to teach each other, because James is right. They'll teach each other, but maybe not the things you want them to teach each other. So you got to be cautious. You got to stay on top of training. That's my whole thing though. So you had a question from somebody from the last show. Yes. Right? And let's get to it, because I want to make sure that we give an answer here.
Okay, so Adrian Richards, asked if we would address this during the show. She says, my dog is very social, loves to play at the dog park with no issues. Plays with friends' dogs and kids very well, all around well behaved. Being said, sporadically on walks, when on leash, he will show aggression towards other dogs. He will just randomly lunge, growl, bark. It seems very out of character for him. It only happens occasionally. She interrupts with a single word command and praises when he stops. But it's so infrequent, it seems harder to train compared to sit, stay, and etc.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a really good question. And by the way, it's a lot more common than you think. Not necessarily the fact that your dog is not doing it enough. This is like the car breaking down, but it only breaks down like once a month. You can never put your finger on it. You can never tell the mechanic what is going on because it's mostly working. This is the same situation, but it's not very uncommon. Okay, so here's the deal. The part that is not uncommon is that dogs' behavior will be different on leash versus off leash. So some people will say, hey, my dog is great and loves all dogs, and I'm going to go to the park. Well, they know he loves all dogs on leash, right? So they put him in the park, and all of a sudden there's a big scuffle and there's a fight. You have the opposite. Okay, it's not unusual, so it happens. Now, why is it happening? Who knows? There's probably a history there, and dogs have a terrific memory, by the way. And it's conditioning. It's the kind of stuff they condition over time to either like or dislike something. The fact that he's not doing it very often means that this is probably not a really serious problem. It may feel serious when this dog is wanting to kill another dog, but it's probably not a serious problem in severity, and that it doesn't happen all the time. If it was very serious, it would. Now, your interruptions are correct. Okay, you should interrupt the dog. If he's reacting to a verbal interruption, then by all means continue to do that. I always worry when people say, "Hey, I interrupt them," and then I praise them. I always worried about your timing, because that's even more key than the actions you might be doing. Your timing between interruption and your actual praise needs to be separated by several seconds, and the dog dictates it, not us. I can say, hang on for 3 seconds and then praise, and that may not be correct for your dog, and it may be just right for another one. So what you need to do is watch the behavior, pay attention to the dog. You tell him to stop, enough, leave it, phooey, whatever. You give him your single command, and you wait it out, and you wait for that dog to disconnect. And what I mean by that is they have to stop looking at the other dog. They have to be looking at you or away from it. They have to do a physical action of disconnecting. It may be 2 seconds, it may be 5, it may be 6, who knows? The point is, once they've done that physical disconnect from this other dog, this other animal, then you praise. And I want you to praise with quietest method. You touch this dog and you praise with the same command you used earlier. If you said stop, remember your stop is going to be abrupt, right? Stop. Your praise is going to be good, stop. And you're going to get your hands on your dog. And you're going to continue to praise as long as he's not looking at the victim. The minute he turns and starts looking in that direction, just know that he has switched. You need to switch. Get your hands off the dog and immediately say stop. What we need to do here is don't wait for the bark and the growl and the assault to take place for you to say the STOP command or whatever command you're using. Just wait for the dog to focus on this other dog in that sort of way, right? And you know the focus I'm talking about. Usually they lower their ears a bit and they focus on this other dog and they want to do some damage. That's when the praising should take place. Now, if you were to say to me, hey, I'm doing that exactly and it's not working, then what we need to do is we need to throw more dogs at this dog. And what I mean by that is, as opposed to you going on your walks and casually every now and then this taking place, then it's probably a good idea for you to set up an appointment with, somebody, of course, I like to offer us, where we throw dog after dog after dog, right? We just set it up in such a way where we parade a bunch of dogs. In a matter of 1 hour, he'll get to see 40, 50 dogs. You'll get to trigger it and get to do the exercise a bit quicker if you can repeat it. If you can just have more dogs, more subjects. The idea of why he's doing it is hard to understand. Who knows? It may be something that took place early in life, or maybe not. Maybe it's just his reaction and reactivity to the leash itself. So anyway, that would be my coaching for now. Go think about what I just said. Replay this again. Make sure you're doing the steps correctly. It should work. And like I said, if it doesn't, we just throw more dogs until it does. So cool. What else we have, James?
Oh, we've got a couple of questions that also came in through email over last week.
Yeah, let's do it.
One of them is, why do dogs tilt their head?
$1 million question. It's been my belief over the years that, and I say this jokingly to people, if their dog's tilting their head at you, their little brain's still empty. They need more capacity. Typically, it's lack of understanding, in my opinion. Okay, if you're trying to teach your dog to do something and they do this, it's lack of understanding. You can normally get it and be able to do it very quickly with them. If you were to do, a hiss or a sound or a whistle or something that is different, they'll usually tilt their head, and it's in recognition of what in the world do you want me to do. So it's not a hard thing to get your dog to do it. If you haven't seen it on your dog, you haven't made a weird sound. Okay, and if you want to try it, just hiss, whistle, do something, and your dog will most likely tilt their head to try to figure out what it is that you want them to do. We find it a lot when we get into more advanced training, such as search and rescue, and with protection we don't see it, but search and rescue and other any kind of advanced training, you're going to get that, and when you do, you just haven't done a good enough job in explaining to this dog what it is you want him to do, or show them how it is you want him to do it. So anyway, good question though, Mr. Producer.
Yes. Okay. So here's another one for you. And we actually have a dog man about this topic.
Okay.
What are the correct dog park etiquettes? My dog gets beat up almost every time we go to the dog park. Nothing real serious, but there always seems to be a bully chasing them, cornering them, growling, etc.
Boy, I can talk for about 7 minutes on that subject, or better yet, we have a video on that very subject. Go look through our YouTube channel, not the Facebook channel, but the YouTube channel under Canine University, and you're going to find a bunch of videos. One of them is specifically on dog park etiquette, or what should dog park etiquette be, or something to that extent. So go watch it, because it's going to give you a lot more detail than this, and at least you can tell people go watch it if you know who's the person that's bringing the corporate. But I tell you, I have a long, like I said, a long opinion on this, and that's that most people go to dog parks and they bring the wrong dog in. And the worst part about it is that they do not understand that it's the wrong dog, okay? They just bring their dog to play, and the dog may not be playing. He may be harassing the other ones and growling and biting. And by the way, what's happening there is that the other dog, in this case, is receiving a bad experience, which means that they may very well, not necessarily guaranteed, but they may very well pick up those same bad habits themselves, and later on in life start acting aggressive at the dog park or otherwise because of this negative experience. So, yes, there's etiquette, and it should be, if your dog is aggressive or is acting that way, you should not be going there. If your dog is sick, you should not be going to the park. And that's because it's bad for them, and it's bad for the other ones if they're sick. Dogs are picking up kennel cough from parks because of the fact that they're playing all together, they're doing this thing, and some person brought a dog that they did not know was sick. I often tell people, don't go to a dog park. It's great for their socialization, but oh my gosh, don't go to a dog park. Go to any other park and throw a ball. Go to the high school yard and play ball in there. They don't get the social experiment that you would want them to get, but at least they're safer, right? I always worry more about sickness, diseases, than I worry about other things, but aggression is always at dog parks. It's unfortunate.
Well, it's like what we were talking about at the beginning of the show. Dogs teaching themselves behaviors, whether it be from their owners or from other dogs.
Yeah. Bad behaviors primarily. That's it's like kids, right? Mm-hmm. Who are they hanging with? And then you know why your kid is acting the way they are.
Or what are they watching on YouTube?
What are they watching on YouTube? They should be watching Canine University. What do you got?
Okay, so Annette asks, how do you know when your dogs are playing rough or fighting? I have mixed breed dogs, both about the same age. One is very docile. The other is obviously the alpha dog. Seems a little hyperactive around children, but when they start to play, it gets pretty loud, snarling, showing teeth. How do I tell?
Sure. Hard to tell sometimes, but good question. So here's the thing. You got to be your own judge of, how much peace you want at your house. And sometimes, my wife doesn't like any playing in the house with the dogs because they just start knocking things out and they get loud and all that kind of stuff. I'm a lot more tolerant. So I think a big kind of really matters, to the person specifically, but to the dogs themselves, look, if they're escalating to a fight, it got too loud. And now what you need to do, or too hard, what you need to do is start paying attention and saying, okay, well, they play, and when they reach this point is when they had their fight last time. Then you need to interrupt it, some steps before then. It is healthy for them to play and to run and to roughhouse. This is, like 2 6-year-old boys, or girls for that matter. They'll roughhouse and carry on, etc. They need that energy out. The dogs do as well. So it's not a bad thing for them to do. It's measuring, okay, when did it go too far, right? And again, too far to me is that they've escalated to a fight. And if they do that, then it is our job to say, okay, 4 minutes into this, they escalated, and that's when they started jumping on top of each other, and that's when the fight took place. If that is the case, then maybe you need to start paying attention about the 2-minute mark, cut it in half, and say, okay, now they're getting too loud, interrupt it. Typically interruption starts, I would say at the half point, if you know what that half point is, so you figure it out. And you need to have some good level of obedience because it's going to be verbal. You shouldn't be in the middle of it. This is their game, but you should be able to say enough, stop. And you basically give them a timeout. You don't say the words, but, you give them a timeout. You wait a couple of minutes or so. They're going to time out if they're listening to you. And what's going to happen is, since they're in play mode, they're going to start again. The fact that you said it once and, and they stop for a while is good. Let them roughhouse again. And at that magical point, you go ahead and stop again. Now, the other way of telling that the roughhousing is too hard is if one of the dogs doesn't want to do it. You say you have an energetic dog and you have a not so energetic dog. If the other one is like, trying to walk away and saying, leave me alone, then it's too rough play for that one dog. Save them, right? Don't let the other one be a bully, basically. So if that is the case, then there's no rough playing, period, right? So anyway, good question. It's just that it takes a while. So anyway, what else do you have, Mr. Producer?
Oh. I think that pretty much sums it up for today.
Okay, so we don't have any other questions, though. That's interesting. Okay, so the other part that I wanted to really talk about here in passing is back to my little vacation. I wish I did these more often, by the way, because it's kind of funny. I never disconnect, and Lynn was like so happy saying, you're disconnecting. And what do? Spend time watching dogs, right? So maybe I don't need to disconnect. But the other piece that I noticed that was also, well-trained, not well-trained, and it's hard to tell because you don't know the history of these animals, is that there aren't that many fences around a golf course. There aren't, actually, no fences at the golf course, but there are no fences in front of people's houses for the most part. It was interesting to see that those who had animals, they were in and out, and they were outside, and they kept off the road, they kept off the neighbor's stuff, and I'm thinking, where did that all come from, right? Again, I would imagine that some people do have some hidden fences, the actual wired fences. But for the most part, I'd be willing to bet that this is, again, a self-taught deal. It's amusing to me to see that kind of stuff. And where would that dog go if it was to have much more formal training, right? If you have this dog that is so naturally smart, right? Mm-hmm. Where can that dog be today if there was some effort put into training him, right? So it's just amazing, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's the capabilities of dogs are really endless. Yeah,
without a doubt. So anyway, I think we're probably a little bit out of time right now. So there we have it. We answered a few questions for you. We appreciate all of you being here today with us. It's kind of fun. If the question comes in after this, or for whatever reason James missed the question and we didn't answer it, we'll make sure to respond online, or like James did earlier, he'll probably carry it on for next show, and then we'll just also cover it live. We'll be back on May 22nd at 12:30 And again, we're experimenting with time. That's why we went to this time a while back, and we'll see. At that time, I think we're going to announce a different time frame just to see if that one works best. We appreciate those who have been jumping around back and forth. So please share if you like what you see us. This is all we get out of this, by the way. We get likes, we get hearts, we get shares, and we get excited when we see them. Isn't that, we have kind of a boring life, James.
Yeah.
So this is Angel Soriano, a.k.a. Dogman, barking back at you. You asked, we answered. If you like this video, please help us out by subscribing to our YouTube channel. We also appreciate your comments if you have them. Remember, there are 3 ways of keeping in touch with us. 1, you can email us at dogman@mycanineu.com. 2, you can sign up to our email list at mycanineu.com/AskTheDogman. And 3, you can subscribe to this channel by hitting the subscribe button. You can find all of this information in the comments section below. Thank you.